karne sa bukod, yun ang panakasalanan ng dito.
Media educators and journalists called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media won't contribute to
Located on the northwestern part of Luzon, Ilocos Norte is a coastal province that takes pride in its great historical past. Even before the Spaniards came to the Philippines, the coastal plains were already known as Ilocos.
When you say "I", it's a prefix meaning for people from. Loco or Looc means lowland. So when you say Iloco, complete na yung Iloco na yan, people from the lowland.
In 1591, right after Spain took over Manila, galleon ships headed north and discovered Ilocos. This place became a hub for Spanish trading ships that transport goods to China. The region was later called Ilocos. After more than 400 years, Ilocos Norte never lost its old world charm. Its rugged beauty remains to be a favorite tourist destination among local and foreign travelers.
You were saying about the beauty of Ilocos. No? Innate na yan eh. Even before the Spaniards came, the Ilocos provinces or the Ilocos region was already a beautiful place to visit. The people are lured to our place not only because of the modern things that we have, but because of the innate quality of Ilocos.
Time seems to stand still for visitors enamored by the old world charm of Ilocos Norte. The Paoay Church, named UNESCO Heritage Site in 1993, is just one of many centuries-old Baroque churches and colonial Spanish structures in this northern province. Aside from the old churches, another Ilocos Norte tourism centerpiece is the Malacañang of the North. A former residence of the Marcoses, the Grand House showcases memorabilia from the first family. The province has an arid and hardly fertile terrain, but the hardworking Ilocanos turned Ilocos into an abundant land. The picturesque desert of Paoay Sand Dunes offers an exhilarating 4x4 ride and sandboarding activities. No Ilocania trip is complete without a trip to another Ilocos pride. Pagudpud boasts of clean white sand beaches and aquamarine green waters. A gastronomic feast on Ilocos' unique cuisine is a good ending to any itinerary. A place where rich cultural history and natural wonders collide, Ilocos Norte is always worth a visit.
One thing about Ilocos Norte now, the people of Ilocos Norte and Ilocosur have imbibed in themselves the thinking that we are already learning to become a tourist destination. So we are now leaning towards entertaining people coming here dahil nagiging ano na kami, tourism-oriented.
Can Ilocos Norte successfully marry old and new without losing its soul? Today, we get the answers from a woman who is leading Ilocos Norte towards Paspas Duras, or speedy progress. Wonderful to have you on News Cafe, Governor Imee Marcos.
Thanks. Hi.
So, economically, tourism has been a big driver for Ilocos Norte. Can you tell us what you did exactly to really change things around?
I got really lucky. So I arranged to get really lucky with a lot of prayer, La Virgen Milagrosa. And the truth is, I know nothing about tourism. So nakachamba lang kami. The intention was to get really BPOs, was to get call centers. But as you know, there was a recession. There was a great hesitation to move out of Manila. There were some bad experiences with going out of town because of the limit in the talent pool. And so medyo hirap pa rin kami, but a few BPOs have located, so we're very happy about that. We really need to generate jobs.
Well, Lawag has been named the #1 tourist destination in Region 1, no?
Is that so?
Number 10
Region
in the whole
1
of the
lang.
Philippines.
Okay.
But number 10 in
Yeah.
the Philippines. So.
Yeah, that's right. We've been really lucky, as I said earlier. We started out with Paoay Kumakaway because we figured that would be the linchpin for everything. Dahil Paoay has pretty much everything that we can think of. It's got the Paoay Lake, which is almost 500 hectares large, and you can do all sorts of sports. You can do the regatta and kayaking and rowing and all that stuff. And on the other hand, it's also got the sand dunes where you can do all the sandboarding, the death-defying 4x4 with no safety features. No, hindi naman ganun kagrabe, pero slightly. It's fun though. And you have Malacanang of the North, so that has sort of some sentimental history. It's part of the Marcos Trail. Pagkatapos, it has, of course, the golf course and Paoay Church. So Paoay Church is the World Heritage Site of UNESCO. So that seems to be a draw. It still is for the pilgrimages and for all the heritage
So you've got
tourism.
everything. You have rich culture, history.
Yeah, I think we don't have a volcano. But I always tell them that we've got the beach,
volcano.
we've got food, we've got lots of heritage, we've got wind and sand sports. The volcano's on its way, the governor's building it.
Well, tell us about this Johnny Moon campaign. Very catchy campaign.
Oh, Johnny Moon, yes. It's sort of really confused. We have all these ADHD sort of assemblage of images. It's a bit of a confusion because of the mustache. Everyone's got a mustache here. So we started with that because of Johnny Moon, hashtag for Juan Luna, the first global Pinoy. Because he was, after all, in the 19th century, the Filipino, the only Indio at that time to be displayed in the Louvre, who kept winning all the art contests. So we've sort of got an art tradition, and we've pegged that on the tourism campaign. Yeah,
there you go.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
what we see going around. I
I
love
don't know
it.
about that.
Diba? Yan.
Bagay ba? Hindi.
Bagay, maganda pa rin.
Ewan ko, nakakahatching. Pero ayos lang. Ayun, alang-alang kid.
Very catchy.
Johnny Moon, the Juan Luna push. And it's really caught fire with a lot of the kids. We have a digital media festival, which is quite fun. Gobbing. Geeks on the beach. It's very, very enjoyable.
What happens?
So I have a background in animation and film, so it's something I'm really comfortable with, and it's a natural. But at the same time, we've got the sports kids doing what they're doing, the windsurfer boys, and a lot of the sandboarders. So it's good fun.
In 2012, you launched the La Milagrosa Festival. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, the patron saint of the province is La Virgen Milagrosa. I'm very much against generating this fake sort of festivals just to attract tourists. It has to be meaningful to the locals as well. That's why Sinulog, for example, is unbeatable because it really derives from local history. And in our case, we have a very rich legacy from La Virgen Milagrosa. She came over during the Japanese persecutions and insisted on coming to Ilocos Norte. Apparently, she was intended for some other province, some other parish, but she made her way here. So she's a great Milagrosa peg for the intrepid Ilocana. It really works, a pioneering lady, and we have lots of them all over the world because the La Virgen Milagrosa is also a perfect peg for what the province lives on, which is the migrant workers. We have a huge migrant population. Some of them are balikbayan. They've actually settled overseas in the United States, obviously in Hawaii. There's so many of them. Lahat kami may kamag-anak doon. And they're very generous, and they give us lots and lots of dollars, so we're more or less remittance addicted, which is not necessarily a good thing. And so we pray to the Virgin. And strangely enough, it all sorts of works. This year, for example, we set up the first Nora Honor statue, and it was based on Himala, which is also Milagrosa.
That's
so these sand dunes, matagal nang iniiyakan ng mga farmers. I mean, there's nothing that you can cultivate. There are no crops that will grow in sand. There's no water. There's no soil. There's no nothing. And the fishermen also had no way of getting fish in this extremely windy and dusty place. But it turns out that, in fact, the sand dunes that we were all crying over are a sandbox where everyone can play, do all sorts of sports, all kinds of art and creative leisure activities. So it's become a really fun place to go to.
You turned it around.
Big thanks to Nora Honor also.
So this is the Elsa statue.
That's the Elsa statue because the Himala movie turned things around for so many of us in the Paoay area. And what we thought was a wasteland was in fact a giant sandbox for everyone to play, to enjoy, to be creative. And strangely enough, yung Himala, kanta rin ni Bamboo. So it all sort of worked. Bamboo also ran up to the statue during his concert and sang Himala.
Yes.
And
This is the recent concert, no?
It's
Last
the
weekend.
recent concert.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we had Leroy New come over. He's sort of rock star of the sculpture world, and he made an interactive park out of all the junk, all the basura of the provincial engineering office.
Yeah.
So it was really fun because the kids were playing all over. We also got to borrow the costumes of Lady Gaga that were made of plastic toys, so everyone was posing in them.
Yeah.
We tend to get too clever about all these tourism events. Eh, yung pala, sa bandang huli, all everyone wants is just an opportunity to tweet some insane picture, to Instagram around the world, and to geoblog nonstop. So we're also learning that, you know,
You're really making use of social media.
you don't really need to like break your heads and come up with this extremely complicated, costly advertising campaign.
Yeah.
The kids will do it for you if maangas talaga yung images.
Yeah. Well, speaking of advertising campaigns, you've really done this on your own without the help of the Department of Tourism.
Yeah,
So this
that's
is
sort of
your
a sticky
initiative.
point. That's right. It's totally a local initiative. Actually, we launched ahead of the DOT because they were taking so long, and I was getting nervouser and nervouser. What happened was that in the past, Ilocos Norte was dependent on China tourists coming over in junket, in flights from the different cities in China. They'd come here strictly to gamble. And that was also the time when the flights direct to the China mainland were prohibited to Taiwanese nationals. Taiwanese were in fact the biggest investors, and yet they couldn't go and see their factories in China. They had to change plane. They changed plane in Hong Kong, which eventually became too expensive. They then changed plane in Macau. And then they discovered Lawag, which was infinitely cheaper. So they would just change plane here. One plane from Taiwan would come in, they'd cross down the tarmac, and then the other plane would take them to the mainland. And that's how it worked. And after a while, they realized they could stop over and not just walk on the tarmac, and they could come and see Ilocos. So that's how it worked back in the day. We lost that market because we've become so uncompetitive. Macau rose, Singapore rose, and as a result, it's been a wake-up call. So we're pushing for domestic tourism for the very first time. But it's a real boon because fortunately there are more Ilocanos in more countries in the world than there are members to the United Nations. There are Ilocanos in every corner of the universe. So they've been a real marketing campaigners. They are the real pushy ones.
Well, I'd like to
And
ask you,
I'm
you
very
brought up
grateful.
the Chinese and Taiwanese tourists. Has this row between the Philippines and China affected tourism among the Chinese?
Yeah, you know, the reality is it's been very tough for us because Taiwan and the Chinese islands are very, very nearby.
Yes.
For us, when we turn on the radio, for example, in Pagudpud, it's in Mandarin. It's only 400 kilometers to Kaohsiung. It's 550 kilometers to Metro Manila. So, mas malakas ang radyo, naturally, and it's in Mandarin. So, it should have been our primary market. It continues through the charters of the junket operations, but the widespread mainstream tourism is not really coming over. So that's a real shame because that's the biggest market in the world. We've also had very little help from the DOT in that sense, so it's all locally generated. I have to plague all my locals to help us all the time.
Well, you are a genius in communications and in coming up with a lot
I
of
don't
these-
know about that. I think we got really lucky. There are so many budget flights these days. And the unfortunate tragedies of Visayan weather have really pushed people to Luzon. Natatakot ng tao pumunta sa malayo sa Visayas kasi kinakabahan sa sunod-sunod na bagyo. So eto nga, In the meantime, we've also made an effort to push for new tourism, meaning, syempre, yung classic Northern Luzon tourism are the heritage, the churches.
Right.
If you make it to the rice terraces, yan din yung mga cordillera. So we've tried to push forward from that. Unang-una, yung sports tourism,
Yes.
yung malaki yun yung sports and adventure, talagang a lot of
Lakas
leisure
ng hangin
activity.
dito sa windsurfing.
Lakas ng windsurfing. We have lots and lots of windsurfers coming from Europe and overseas. I don't really know how they hear about it, but they say it's Maui in Hawaii 20, 30 years ago. So
Yeah.
it sounds fun. We
Yeah.
have, of course, we've now become the nation of zip lines, and we have one that's
Yes.
solid all over water, 1.6 kilometers, so it's massive.
Yeah.
And we have all these wind and sand generated sports. So
Right.
it's good fun because it's totally different
You've
from
got the
everyone
coast, the
else.
territorial areas, yeah.
We haven't really explored too much of the mountains. 2/3 of Ilocos Norte is all mountain, but the mountain bikers have been going up to Solsona, Apayao. They've been going up to Adams, and many people have now discovered the Tingyan tribal
Yes.
village in Nueva Era.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be more and more important. Some have inquired, in fact, about tribal weddings, which is interesting because dati puro heritage weddings, like my nephew Luis Araneta and Sandra Rocha. They got married in Sarat, and it was gorgeous because the church is an old one. Ngayon, nagpo-push forward na rin. Meron na naman bago, yung mga tribal. Meron rin mga green weddings, so we're really open to do that because we have a lot of beaches. We even have a chapel, La Milagrosa Chapel on the beach, which is immensely photogenic and cinematic. So you're bound to have a really pretty wedding. And we can guarantee the food miles, which means that everything's grown in Ilocos Norte. We can even guarantee the handloom textiles because
Beautiful
we are
fabric,
doing a lot of that here.
Yeah.
So it's be interesting options for unique weddings.
Yeah.
So we're pushing for that also because people want more and more unique experiences.
Well, you know, a true Ilocano knows his roots and his culture. And because he knows his roots and his culture, he always takes care of everything that he has. Anyway, this is the only province that we have, so why don't we love it? Once the Ilocano rises in the morning, he thinks about his land, he thinks about being frugal, he thinks about planting this so that tomorrow he will have something to eat. And he is so independent that he does not even rely on buying anything from elsewhere, even especially from Manila. But then the Ilocano was not attracted to Manila. He stayed here, he tilled his land, he did everything despite the hot weather, despite the harsh land and everything else. But he became self-reliant.
Middle Eastern countries like Morocco and Dubai are famous for their natural sand dunes. Fortunately, we don't have to travel that far to see such amazing beauty. In the Philippines, adventure-seeking travelers travel up north for a thrilling taste of 4x4 riding and sandboarding right here in the Paoay Sand Dunes. Here in the Philippines, adventure-seeking tourists travel up north to experience the thrill of 4x4 riding and sandboarding on the Paoay Sand Dunes. But there's more to this natural wonder than just a short-lived adventure. Movie directors here and abroad have been drawn to the Ilocos sands. Governor Imee Marcos is a fiery presence on any stage, always determined to excel to get the job done. No doubt, her extensive studies and experiences in theater, acting, writing, and film prepared her well for a stellar role on the political stage. Imee Marcos studied acting and playwriting at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts and the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. She is one of the first female graduates from Ivy League school Princeton University in the USA, graduating with honors thereafter. She is a noted theater, TV, and film producer responsible for children's shows Kulit Bulilit and Kaluskus Musmos. As Director General of the Experimental Cinema of the Philippines in the 80s, she produced some of the country's best films, including Oro Plata Mata
Huwag kayong iiyak. Tatagan ninyo ang inyong kalooban.
and Himala.
Tayo ang gumagawa ng mga sumpa sa mga Diyos, walang himala.
She has collaborated with top directors Marilu Diaz-Abaya for the movie Brutal, Peke Galiaga for Scorpio Nights, and Ticoy Aguiluz for The Boatman. She also produced and wrote animations featuring Nonoy Marcelo's Daril Makoy and Lamang, among others. In 2007, IMEE MARCOS established the Creative Media and Film Society of the Philippines, or CREAM, a production company that specializes in animation, game, and film production, of which she is president. Through this group, IMEE MARCOS's pet project Pintakasi, an indie film that combines live action and animation, won an award for Best Multimedia Film in the 2011 Metro Manila Film Fest. Ilocos Norte is a popular location for the local and foreign film industry. Famous Hollywood films shot here are Born on the 4th of July, Platoon, and Mad Max. Among the local movies filmed here are the Panday film series, Chito Roño's musical Emir, and Temptation Island. But Ilocos Norte is perhaps most notable for Ishmael Bernal's Himala, which was filmed entirely in this northern province in just 3 weeks. Recently, a sculpture of the lead character Elsa, played by Nora Honor, was erected on the Paoay Sand Dunes to pay tribute to this cult classic. Governor Imee Marcos believes the movie industry is a boon to Ilocos Norte, the best form of advertising and exposure for her province. She authored a provincial ordinance, the Tri-Media Incentives Act in Ilocos Norte, that provides filmmakers and movie producers with incentives to facilitate production activities and minimize costs. This is yet another way that Governor Imee Marcos is setting the stage for Ilocos Norte's bright future by bridging arts, culture, and politics. What is the future for Ilocos Norte and Philippine film? Let's find out from the governor, who has a shared passion for both public service and the arts. So very photogenic area you have. Also, that's why a lot of directors have been attracted to this area. No?
That's actually what came first. I think even before tourism, we were getting a lot of free media mileage simply because people would come over and start shooting shows.
Right.
And there would be international shows, and then we'd get MTVs, and then we'd get all sorts of other shows. But historically, matagal ng location ng Ilocos Norte. Kaya lang we're always the stand-in for someone else.
Middle Eastern
like,
country.
The Patapat, for example, is always in the car and motorcycle ads.
Right.
Pretending to be the Italian Riviera, but it's actually somewhere between Ilocos and Cagayan. And that's the same case with the windmills that have been the stand-in for California somewhere.
Or Scandinavia, Denmark.
Then we have the same story for so many other places. And you know, the movie industry is extremely superstitious. And film and TV say there are places na swerte, may artista na patok. And I don't know, for some reason, a lot of the films that came here really made lots and lots of money. So Temptation Island was originally made here, became a cult classic, unintentionally hilarious. It was remade, and the second film also made money. So Himala was made here, Born on the 4th of July was made here. A lot of the Vietnam movies were shot here, the first Mad Max. It goes on, and we're very proud of this cinematic history, especially in the days of FPJ, when he would shoot the Panday every single year. So naging sikat yung mga halimaw na nasa sand dunes. So these are the things that we like also about film and TV. We can't afford the advertising, so coming out for 2 solid hours is a real boon. And it gives lots and lots of jobs, because the multiplier, the cascade of jobs, inevitably they're going to hire caterers, van rental, helicopter rental, there's cast, there's crew, carpenters, costume, makeup, lahat na. Everyone gets a piece of the pie. So
would you say that's helping to keep more Ilocanos here? Because a lot of them tend to migrate.
Yes, that's the real challenge, to have the jobs here. We've been growing at a tremendous rate, 12% plus. So the boom's not merely in tourism, but in real estate, in transport, in communications. There's been a real boom in the province. I think think, as I said, the OFWs and the migrants have been sending all this money in. But right now, the challenge really is to create jobs here, and secondly, to convert all these consumeritis and shopping in the mall that's corrupting very stingy and austere Ilocanos into consumers.
Right. Yeah.
So sana the consumers will become investors and really invest. So I'm beginning to see a little bit of that. There's some retirement interest, tourism interest, and that's very good. But the young kids, we're hopeful that the call center business will broaden and that agriculture will pick up with packaging, processing, and so on.
Well, let's talk about another area that's also gaining a lot of investment. You're very interested in film and the arts. So you have a degree, you've studied extensively on film, and you even formed CREAM, which is the Creative Media and Film Society of the
Yes,
Philippines.
that's right.
Tell us more about
I've been
where it's going.
I've been doing film for a long, long time, long before it was fashionable. We used to call it experimental cinema of the Philippines, and a lot of stalwarts derived from there. So I have a particular affinity to film. We produced Himala, Oro Plata Mata, and quite a few of those other movies. In the period that's now called the golden age of film, it's quite interesting. We never thought we were golden anything at the time. We thought we were just a bunch of crazy people getting to do what we like to do.
Yeah.
In fact, it was really depressing. We brought all sorts of fancy movies to Cannes, and in the end, despite the awards, the film that won and got the contracts was Weng Weng. I distinctly remember that. It was a real eye-opener. It's really funny.
Yeah.
In any case, film's been very good to Ilocos Norte, so we're very lucky for that. We're trying to bring more graphic arts, more digital, more of that stuff here. I think because also of the migrant population, a lot of the kids are really online, very non-analog, really pushing for interactive. So the generation of content is really going to be important. I'm not really interested in snooty art films. It's really not something that I want to get into. I much prefer art that's actually public, that's accessible, that's loved by the community. So we like to do community projects. We like to fix community art. We do design charrettes on the floor and make mayors and policemen draw what they would like to see in their town.
Yeah.
It's a consultative process, and a process that I don't like to see fancy paintings that no one looks at and million-dollar museums. Our museums here, we like to treat as blockbuster museums.
How do you do that?
I like to make sure that there's popular stuff, we allow photographs, and that the children can play.
Right.
It's very, very important that they get involved with the exhibits. And sometimes in Manila, they don't believe us when we show them our museum numbers na 30,000, 6,000 a day. Siyempre, in Manila, the museums don't get that crowded.
Yeah.
But here, we make sure that tourists come in. I'm not at all about snobby museums, and I don't see the point if no one's going to come and...
Sand dunes, according to my father, who studied this, these are sand coming from the sea, brought by the strong waves. But, since the contour of the place is not flat, it's hilly. So, when the sand that is brought to the shore becomes dry, then the wind carries them towards the east. And it has covered a lot of rolling hills. The enterprising Ilocano, or the entrepreneurs, thought of saying, why don't we bring tourists to this place? And this time you will notice, those who come to Lawag, adventurers or not, they always go and visit the sand dunes. Not maybe perhaps always for 4x4 or sunboarding, but they come to the sand dunes to watch the beautiful sunset from the West Philippine Sea.
was it like growing up in the Marcos family? I mean, when you're
Yeah, I
youth,
think
you
it's a
live-
real challenge
Yeah.
because both my parents were so energetic and so hardworking. It was also lonely because they were always away.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they pushed really hard for genuine excellence.
Yeah.
And my father was really rigorous about getting everything analyzed and really accurate. And my mother, on the other hand, was extremely creative, always has been.
Yeah.
Had the most fascinating mad friends. And you met everyone. You were in the loop on everything. So
This is probably your earliest exposure to arts and culture, huh? Because she was very much into it.
yeah, my mother is very, very interested, and my father had so many writer friends. So I think they shared that. It was always quite interesting.
Well, you were in London a lot of them when you were growing up. You did your schooling also in London, so you were away when a lot of the
Yeah, I
political
spent a
turmoil
great
was
time,
happening.
a great deal of time away, but I come from a very political family, so you know, there's 200 plus years on my mother's side and almost 200 years on my dad's side.
Yeah.
So can't really get away from it. It's
That's
almost
true.
congenital.
Yeah.
But I'm the one who's always been trying to escape. My sister's done it successfully. She's not been in politics forever.
More the socialite, maybe?
Not really.
Is it?
She's not
Yeah.
very. She's not that social. She just doesn't run for office.
Yeah.
Um,
And for your brother, when Bongbong ran in 2010, you were behind his electoral campaign. You were actually
I'm not
behind
so
his
sure
success.
about that. I wasn't that much behind it because I became a candidate myself. I had to run for governor here suddenly.
What do you think made it successful, for whether it was your campaign, or what did you try to do to really get the people interested in whether it was yours or because you helped Bongbong?
We did try to formulate a campaign that's very much like him.
Right.
I think people talk too much these days about branding and packaging and all this stuff. But I think at the end of the day, the campaign needs to have truth, has to be truthful to the candidate. It needs to look like the product. It can't just be a fancy slogan and some groovy songs. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So it really has to be truthful. And my brother's very laid back. He's a very chill sort of guy. He's not the typical type A hypermanic politician.
Like you.
Yeah,
the
I'm
one
much
you take
more
after your
hyper
father.
ADHD than he is. He's very chill, very easygoing. And we wanted a campaign that reflected that. It would also be very anti-politician. And we know for a fact that by and large, in general, the public doesn't like politicians at all. The less you look political, the better they like you.
Yeah.
So we tried to just put up an ad, and it actually ended up having very funny comments because he was walking down and very breezy in this sort
This
of
checkered
linen shirt in the windmills by the beach. And people were asking exactly what's this ad selling? Which was a good question because it wasn't really pushing for anything. It was just showing my brother in Ilocos Norte where renewable energy had
Bangui
become
Windmills,
a campaign for all of us.
Yeah.
We're really pushing hard for renewables. And we now have much bigger windmill projects coming. They're the biggest investment, not tourism at all. It's really all about renewables. We're committed to the clean and green, so we're reviving all the hydro as well as the solar projects, and hopefully we get approvals on all those. But the wind is up and running, so we used it, but very, very subliminally and anti-politician in every way, because it's such a turn-off when you get heavy-handed and keep jabbering away about all sorts of stuff.
But big catchphrase
people are
now,
very
sustainable
smart these
development.
days.
Yeah.
It really
can't
doesn't
fool
work
them.
to just keep forcing things down
right.
their throat. Be
You recently
interested.
renovated the Ferdinand Marcos Museum where there's
There
a lot
are
of...
3 actually. There's so
Okay.
many now. There's a place where he was born. The Marcos Trail is really patok. My family's
Yes.
been sort of in denial about it. We were really not certain whether we should open the houses or not, but people kept demanding to open them, so we have to open them. And it's actually been a good experience. People are sometimes saying that it's revisionist history, but in fact,
like controversial.
here in Ilocos Norte, my dad's just a homeboy.
Homeboy, okay.
He's just somebody that they knew and grew up with and loved.
Yeah.
So the political issue is not clear at all.
Yeah.
And then he did well. He became president forever and ever.
Yeah.
So
it's said that
for us here, it's not a political statement. We're not
Right.
revising anything. We're
Yeah.
just telling everyone the story, or our children the stories that we knew.
Yeah.
So there's a place where he was born, and where all the ladies weave, and there's his classroom where he was grade 1 with a giant ant.
Yeah.
Because there's a story to that too. And then there's the political house, which is Batak.
Right.
And finally, there's the Malacanang of the North, which is on Paoay Lake, where he spent globs of time when he was already in Malacanang. So it became Malacanang of the North because they'd have cabinet meetings and all that stuff there.
Yeah.
So
Well, of course, there's the great story of how your father and mother met. There's a nice exhibit on that in one
Oh,
of the
that's
museums.
in Batak, about
Yes.
the 11-day courtship.
Right.
I know.
Quite
We
the
think we're
romantic-
really modern today, but I think that's way more modern.
Yeah.
That's almost the Instagram marriage.
So it was happening a lot. Well, I read somewhere your mother was quite upset. There are no women grandchildren, so no one's going to inherit the shoes. They're all boys.
No, my mom's not especially interested in shoes. She was at that time pushing Marikina and the export processing centers, because we were the very first to push for business, for outsourcing of Nike in Bataan, for Adidas, Puma, all these
Right.
brands at that time. My mother's actually much more interested in jewelry than in shoes,
That
so
too.
it's totally a mistake.
Well, how do you feel about working with your mother? Your mother, so it's your brother, and then of course Imelda Marcos is still in.
Yeah,
in
my
also
mother and
in
I are
Congress.
partners now, because she's the congresswoman, what I used to be in the 2nd District. So she works in Congress, and I'm here in the province. I was congressman representing that district forever and ever. So politically, we get on very, very, very well.
Politically.
We come to the same conclusion. I'm usually very boring and rational, or try to be, whereas she's very instinctive, and we always come to the same conclusion somehow. Usually she's much quicker than I am, but that's another story. So it's fun. I mean, it's like coming home. We grew up with so many of the people, and unfortunately, they complain about us all the time because, they compare us to our parents, and we're simply not good enough.
Yeah.
So my parents were really committed, and we are too, but I suppose everyone comes to a different style. It's a different generation.
Yeah.
I like to think we're more consultative. The Ilocano society is very male-dominated on its surface, but in fact the mothers and the Ilocanos are very strong-willed.
Yeah.
So I think in the beginning there was some kind of tension about being ordered around by this female. But then again, I think they got used to it.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily order people around so much, except when they're really, really wrong. No.
Women know how to get things done.
But I think it's a more consultative approach,
Yes.
and we try to listen more. A big part of it was manifested in the space. A big thing for my first 2 years in office was just tearing down fences, literally. We broke down and demolished miles and miles of fence here in Lawag City, in Ilocos Norte, took out all the fences in the capital.
Yeah.
It's very old-fashioned having all these silly fences.
Yeah.
After 9/11, we all learned that this wasn't security, because it's very easy for bad guys to hide behind big fences.
It's true.
In fact, it's much better to have all the eyeballs looking in and checking out what's going on. So,
well, if we may talk about now a figurative tearing of the fences, now we cannot get away from the fact that the Marcos name is associated with some of the dark times in the Philippines. How have you torn down fences in terms of dealing with that?
Well, I think history is changing. Not because we're revising it or editing or pretending things that didn't happen, but I think overall it's very, very clear. People talk to me even nostalgically about the days past.
History.
People are always nostalgic about the Marcos era, and there's a great deal of, there are a lot of surveys now that surprise me, where people say that despite all the media, despite all the bashing that occurred after EDSA, people keep voting my dad as the best president. that the Philippines had. So I think people have become more curious and more rigorous in their thinking, and all these manufactured notions have not been accepted.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of kids are researching, studying. In a 20-year period, inevitably there are mistakes. I think they're unintentional and they're not policy, but certainly there's been a lot of curiosity, a lot of research and interest. And I'm hopeful that one day a compromise that will be good for everyone will finally allow this nation to push forward. Getting mired in the past doesn't allow you to move on. And I think the time has come for the Philippines. We've had a bit of a push with the Southeast Asian Miracle. It's really important that as a nation we push forward and get our act together and reconcile with everyone and just move on.
Right.
Just carrying on about the 60s and the 70s and then the 80s and the 90s and blaming everyone that came before you. It's boring.
You can't live in the past.
I mean, seriously, we just need to move forward.
To defend press freedom.
Well, let's talk about you now. I mean, again, falling in love again, of course. You're married again now. I mean, what was
Long
it like?
time now.
It's been a long time, of course. I mean, in terms of your personal life, how do you find the time to, for downtime when you're so busy with your schedule, shuffling back and forth between Manila?
Yeah, the traveling is really
Ilocos
difficult.
Norte?
The traveling is really difficult because my kids, my husband's not from here, and then my kids are in Manila mostly, are traveling, so it's a bit of a stretch.
How do
We
you
just
balance?
grab time to get together and don't sleep well, don't eat well, do everything that they tell you, but not well.
You are
so on.
so successful in everything you do. So if we may
I'm
ask,
not so sure about that. I don't think so.
so humble, but really in everything, I mean, in everything you've excelled. You're always graduating with honors in all your schoolwork. But what do you...
I'm just nerdy. I don't know about
Good to be nerdy.
success. I don't
What
know about
exists-
success. I like school.
Well, in terms of
So
balancing...
it's easy for me.
Oh, and it's important to always keep learning, which you continue to do, right? In everything you do, how do you make sure that you are? What do you do to make sure you're successful both in your personal life, your career? What is it that keeps you going?
I'm not fixated on success. People keep telling me to go for higher office, for national office, but I'm not really that interested in politics. I had to run in Ilocos Norte because of family reasons, because there was so much trouble. But I enjoy being here. It's good fun. It's curious. Local government, I find, allows someone who is fundamentally a creative person to operate much better. The dry dust of lawmaking, which is the business of Congress, doesn't in many ways allow you to do very much creative work. But here in the province, being a local government official, being a hands-on executive allows you, or in fact requires you to innovate. Because there's so many age-old problems like poverty, malnutrition, all these old problems that if you didn't think out of the box or even jump out of the box, they would never get solved because they've not been solved for centuries. So we're always thinking of new ways to do things. And I think that at the end of the day, it's not so different from making a film. At the end of the day, para kang gumagawa ng pelikula na araw-araw may bagong problema, kailangan lutasin mo.
Tama.
Kulang yung ilaw. Wala yung director.
Kulang ng budget.
Nabitin yung artista. It's sort of the same thing dito
good
sa
metaphor.
local government. In a funny way, I'm discovering that you don't have enough policemen. One of your mayors has decided not to perform, and your health care continues to be lacking. So if you don't think of new ways, you're never going to be able to respond to all the people's needs.
Right.
So that's the reason I think that it allows for a great deal of creativity, of innovation, of new thinking. And I found it very satisfying on that end, even if it's really 24/7 and not very good for a vibrant family life.
You're a workaholic, but balancing it very well. Huh? Seems.
I don't think I'm a workaholic, but people say I work very long hours. I just want to get it done.
Yeah.
That's
just important you deliver on your
I just get
commitments.
very tired of waiting around.
Yeah.
I'm always in a big rush,
Yeah.
which is not so good. In my next life, I will be given patience, but until then, I'm just who I am.
It's difficult.
I'm in a mad rush.
Yeah. Well, what is it that you would like to be remembered for? What would you say your legacy?
Oh, I'm not intending on dying very soon. And I think legacy
That's not
projects are always trouble. No, I think at the end of the day, it's not that you built all these humongous, useless white elephant things. But more importantly, it's really touching people's lives. I'm very, very concerned about providing quality education, good jobs, supporting
Yes.
families that have been separated by jobs overseas. This is the real job of governance,
Yeah.
of taking care of people, rather than all these so-called legacy projects that are a little bit comical sometimes.
That's how our public servants should be. Wonderful insight there. Well, moving forward, we speak with the future generation, so let's talk about your son.
Michael is my middle son. He
Yes.
just finished law.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you feel about them working?
Well, I didn't
now?
want him to be a lawyer.
Why not?
Because the justice system, unfortunately, is a very troubled system, and I didn't want him to be completely crushed
Yeah.
by the reality of practicing. But he was determined to do it, and he's finished, so I'm delighted.
Morgan's taken after you in terms of film. You know, he's into the film arts.
He was modeling because it paid so well, and then he moved into retail very quickly. He likes to sell shoes, and I think he wants to design stuff now.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's really a problem. Sumikat ng masyadong maaga eh. And then Michael's my second son. He's now a lawyer in CSIP. And my third son is Matthew, who's wanting to be the Filipino Jerry Maguire.
Really?
And handling
Sports,
PBA basketball players and
Yeah.
some other athletes.
Yeah.
So I hope he makes a go of that, because he's inventing not just a new business, but a whole industry.
Yeah. If there's something that really changed you about being in government, what would it be? Because this is a tough job.
I think we're a little bit too high and mighty in Congress, and I don't say that referring to the congressmen today, but to myself when I was in Congress. We thought we knew all the answers, and it was always some great groovy new policy. In fact, many of the solutions can be provided by the people on the ground themselves if you only listen. So a great deal of local government is listening. I think you just have to listen to everyone, because good ideas come from them. Many of the solutions are best known by the farmers and the fishermen. And sometimes they're really, really simple, and they get the job done.
Yeah.
So I think there's a level of humility and modesty that you learn from working with people on the ground.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. Mostly people are, many politicians begin in local government and then go to national. I never wanted to be in local government. So it's sort of a big education for me to come here. The culture change is massive. But having said that, I find it far more satisfying than many of the years I spent in Congress.
Yeah. Well, very well said. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Governor Imee Marcos. Thank you for your time. We cap off our trip to Ilocos Norte with a visit to the famous Bangui Windmills. The Bangui wind farm is made up of 20 turbines that make up a graceful arc of rotating blades along this 9-kilometer stretch of Bangui Bay. This fusion of technological and natural elegance has helped reduce carbon emissions significantly and has led to huge savings in electricity costs. It also attracts thousands of tourists each year. With openness to modern technology, sustainable development, and the creation of new opportunities, coupled with a deep awareness of their strength as a people and a strong woman at the helm, Ilocos Norte is poised to be a success story to watch and learn from. I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Thanks for watching News Cafe.
Media educators and journalists call to become press freedom. Media corruption in media, no Sa bukod, yun ang pa nakasalanan natin dito.
Media educators and journalists called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media will contribute to
Church, named UNESCO Heritage Site in 1993, is just one of many centuries-old Baroque churches and colonial Spanish structures in this northern province. Aside from the old churches, another Ilocos Norte tourism centerpiece is the Malacañang of the North. A former residence of the Marcoses, the Grand House showcases memorabilia from the first family. The province has an arid and hardly fertile terrain, but the hardworking Ilocanos turned Ilocos into an abundant land. The picturesque desert of Paoay Sand Dunes offers an exhilarating 4x4 ride and sandboarding activities. No Ilocano trip is complete without a trip to another Ilocos pride. Pagudpud boasts of clean white sand beaches and aquamarine green waters. A gastronomic feast on Ilocos' unique cuisine is a good ending to any itinerary. A place where rich cultural history and natural wonders collide, Ilocos Norte is always worth a visit.
One thing about Ilocos Norte now, the people of Ilocos Norte and Ilocosur have imbibed in themselves the thinking na we are already learning to become a tourist destination. So we are now leaning towards entertaining people coming here dahil nagiging ano na kami, tourism-oriented.
Can Ilocos Norte successfully marry old and new without losing its soul? Today, we get the answers from a woman who is leading Ilocos Norte towards Paspas Duras, or speedy progress. Wonderful to have you on News Cafe, Governor Imee Marcos.
Thanks. Hi.
So economically, tourism has been a big driver for Ilocos Norte. Can you tell us what you did exactly to really change things around?
I got really lucky. So I arranged to get really lucky with a lot of prayer, La Virgen Milagrosa. And the truth is, I know nothing about tourism. So nakachamba lang kami. The intention was to get really BPOs, was to get call centers. But as you know, there was a recession. There was a great hesitation to move out of Manila. There were some bad experiences with going out of town because of the limit in the talent pool. And so medyo hirap pa rin kami, but a few BPOs have located, so we're very happy about that. We really need to generate jobs.
Well, Lawag has been named the #1 tourist destination in Region 1, no?
Is that so?
Number 10
Region
in the whole
1
of the
lang.
Philippines.
Okay.
But number 10 in the
Yeah.
Philippines. So.
Yeah, that's right. We've been really lucky, as I said earlier. We started out with Paoay Kumakaway because we figured that would be the linchpin for everything. Dahil Paoay has pretty much everything that we can think of. It's got the Paoay Lake, which is almost 500 hectares large, and you can do all sorts of sports. You can do the regatta and kayaking and rowing and all that stuff. And on the other hand, it's also got the sand dunes where you can do all the sandboarding, the death-defying 4x4 with no safety features. No, hindi naman ganun kagrabe, pero slightly. It's fun though. And you have Malacañang of the North, so that has sort of some sentimental history. It's part of the Marcos Trail. Pagkatapos, it has, of course, the golf course, and Paoay Church.
Right.
So Paoay Church is the World Heritage Site of UNESCO. So that seems to be a draw. It still is for the pilgrimages and for all the heritage
So you've got everything. You have rich culture, history.
Yeah, I think we don't have a volcano. But I always tell them that we've got the beach,
volcano.
we've got food, we've got lots of heritage, we've got wind and sand sports. The volcano's on its way, the governor's building it.
Well, tell us about this Johnny Moon campaign. Very catchy campaign.
Oh, Johnny Moon, yes. It's sort of really confused. You have all these ADHD sort of assemblage of images. It's a bit of a confusion because of the mustache. Everyone's got a mustache here. So we started with that because of
Media educators and journalists called to become press freedom.
This corruption in media won't introduce
Located on the northwestern part of Luzon, Ilocos Norte is a coastal province that takes pride in its great historical past. Even before the Spaniards came to the Philippines, the coastal plains were already known as Ilocos.
When you say I, it's a prefix meaning for people from. Loco or Looc means lowland. So when you say Iloco, complete na yung Iloco na yan, people from the lowland.
In 1591, right after Spain took over Manila, galleon ships headed north and discovered Ilocos. This place became a hub for Spanish trading ships that transport goods to China. The region was later called Ilocos. After more than 400 years, Ilocos Norte never lost its old world charm. Its rugged beauty remains to be a favorite tourist destination among local and foreign travelers.
You were saying about the beauty of Ilocos. No? Innate na yan eh. Even before the Spaniards came, the Ilocos provinces or the Ilocos region was already a beautiful place to visit. The people are lured to our place not only because of the modern things that we have, but because of the innate quality of Ilocos.
Time seems to stand still for visitors enamored by the old world charm of Ilocos Norte. The Paoay
for what the province lives on, which is the migrant workers. We have a huge migrant population. Some of them are balikbayan. They've actually settled overseas in the United States, obviously in Hawaii. There's so many of them. Lahat kami may kamag-anak doon. And they're very generous, and they give us lots and lots of dollars, so we're more or less remittance addicted, which is not necessarily a good thing. And so we pray to the Virgin. And strangely enough, it all sorts of works. This year, for example, we set up the first Nora Honor statue, and it was based on Himala, which is also Milagrosa.
That's
so
right.
These sand dunes, matagal nang iniiyakan ng mga farmers. I mean, there's nothing that you can cultivate. There are no crops that will grow in sand. There's no water. There's no soil. There's no nothing. And the fishermen also had no way of getting fish in this extremely windy and dusty place. But it turns out that in fact, the sand dunes that we were all crying over are a sandbox where everyone can play, do all sorts of sports, all kinds of art and creative leisure activities. So it's become a really fun place to go to.
You turned it around.
Big thanks to Nora Honor also.
So this is the Elsa statue.
That's the Elsa statue because the Himala movie turned things around for so many of us in the Paoay area. And what we thought was a wasteland was in fact a giant sandbox for everyone to play, to enjoy, to be creative. And strangely enough, yung Himala, kanta rin ni Bamboo. So it all sort of worked. Bamboo also ran up to the statue during his concert and sang Himala. And
this is the recent concert, no?
Last weekend. Recent concert. And at the same time, we had Leroy New come over. Johnny Moon, hashtag for Juan Luna, the first global Pinoy, because he was, after all, in the 19th century, the Filipino, the only Indio at that time to be displayed in the Louvre, who kept winning all the art contests. So we've sort of got an art tradition, and we've pegged that on the tourism campaign. Yeah,
there you go.
Oh my God.
That's what we see going around. I love
don't know
it.
about that.
Diba? Yan.
Bagay ba? Hindi.
Bagay, maganda pa rin.
Ewan ko, nakakahatching. Pero ayos lang. Ayun, alang-alang
is
kid.
very catchy.
Johnny Moon, the Juan Luna push. And it's really caught fire with a lot of the kids. We have a digital media festival, which is quite fun. Gobbing. Geeks on the beach. It's very, very enjoyable.
What happens?
So I have a background in animation and film, so it's something I'm really comfortable with, and it's a natural. But at the same time, we've got the sports kids doing what they're doing, the windsurfer boys, and a lot of the sandboarders. So it's good fun.
In 2012, you launched the La Milagrosa Festival. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, the patron saint of the province is La Virgen Milagrosa. I'm very much against generating this fake sort of festivals just to attract tourists. It has to be meaningful to the locals as well. That's why Sinulog, for example, is unbeatable, because it really derives from local history. And in our case, we have a very rich legacy from La Virgen Milagrosa. She came over during the Japanese persecutions and insisted on coming to Ilocos Norte. Apparently, she was intended for some other province, some other parish, but she made her way here. So she's a great Milagrosa peg for the intrepid Ilocana. It really works, a pioneering lady, and we have lots of them all over the world, because the La Virgen Milagrosa is also a perfect peg